was a lot of blood. Hello, I am Lace, and today we will be talking about the film Iron Lung. Now, a little bit of background. Other than doing Let's Plays and such on my channel, I went to film school for 6 years. I graduated college in 2024, and since I've been a freelance videographer. I have made narrative films and commercials for multiple clients, as well as for my own projects. I am currently working on a few of my own Zelda-related projects, but that's just for fun, and they will be eventually posted to the channel. Another quick thing about myself is that while in college I took multiple horror classes, film history classes, as well as one that I nicknamed Fandom Class, where we looked at the reactions of fans throughout the years. While in Fandom Class, I was also in a screen critique class, which we were more on the industry side of reacting to media. So I have a fairly good round understanding of the fandom side and the media side of how people react to films and shows and so on and so forth. And lastly, I was never really big on horror films. I was never really a big horror enjoyer, but after horror class, I actually gained a very good understanding and respect for the genre, as it is an experimental genre, which is just so fun. I also feel that I need to add this little disclaimer here. I don't really watch Markiplier's videos, mainly because I don't normally watch those kind of videos. I usually watch video essays, but when I was younger I used to watch Let's Plays more often, and I was never really into watching horror Let's Plays because I get very scared from horror films and I'd rather not have nightmares. So I didn't tend to watch a lot of his stuff, and don't worry, I realized that I wasn't subscribed to him while making this video, so I fixed that. But the long and short of that is that I'm not gonna give it a good review just because Markiplier made it. I'm gonna talk about what I saw in the theater. This review is about Iron Lung, not Markiplier. Now, Iron Lung. I'm going to try real hard not to spoil anything, but I will put a small spoiler disclaimer on the top left of the screen telling you how deep into the spoilers we get. Number 1 is very light spoilers. There's blood everywhere. Oh my goodness. Number 1 spoiler. And then over to 10 where it is just straight up the plot and it's just full on spoilers. So go as far as you feel comfortable if you don't want spoilers. So I'm not really going to touch too much on the story, but I am going to be talking about a lot of the film techniques used because I find that so interesting, and I don't know if anybody else has been talking about that, but I love that kind of stuff. Now, I went into this film completely blind. Whenever I learn of a film I wish to watch, I totally avoid trailers because trailers spoil things. If you guys have seen the trailers, then you're way ahead of the game than I was walking in there. But I did end up knowing a few things here or there, namely 3 things. First, Markiplier and his team made it, and we always have to support, indie projects. Second, the film is a one-room set movie, which means that it's a film all set in one room. The most famous film using this style is 12 Angry Men, which was released in 1957. It's about 12 members of a jury debating on if they should give a teenager the death sentence. So it's really interesting seeing that this film has been put into that type of category with us. The last thing I knew about this film was how it broke a record of fake blood used in a single film. And after seeing it, yeah, it definitely does. Here's a quick once-over of the whole film before we even get into, the spoiler ratings. The pacing is done phenomenally. It's supposed to be slow. It needs you to sit with yourself as the main character also sits with himself. The silence and the time spent is intentional. The film is also about an eldritch horror. You're not supposed to know what's going on. If the film has to explain to you an eldritch horror, that's not an eldritch horror story, that's just sci-fi. I think they did a fairly good job at showing the horror and not actually explaining it. I had gone with my sister, and she ended up turning to me during the film and telling me to pay attention to something in the background that she had noticed. Then after, we were talking about the film, and she had missed something that I had noticed in the film. This film rewards the observant viewer, which is amazing because it gives you a better rewatch experience. And also how it's a one-room set shows how much detail they put into every scene. As films are very expensive and hard to make, every detail always matters. It's the mise en scène of filmmaking. I also want to say one more thing before moving on to the next section, and that is how this film has the most realistic use of swearing I have seen in films. As it's not forced, it doesn't feel out of place. It's sayings used often in those kinds of situations, and they don't really hold back. Dialogue is one of the hardest things to get right in films, and all of this is very well scripted. Now let's go over the film individually, as in let's go through every little bit of it, and then at the end we'll talk about how everything kind of comes together. This is when I'm going to be putting the spoiler rating up at the top. The spoiler rating will tell you how far into the spoilers there are. And again, 10 is just going to be the straight up plot, so watch out for that. But let's get into the meat and bloody potatoes of this. Makeup and costume design. I know from using the fake blood in my own horror films through the years that fake blood stains. It takes days to get off, honestly. At least the kind that I was using. So it's really no wonder how the makeup stayed so consistent throughout the entire film. They did a really good job with that, as consistency is something very important to keep in mind. It is somebody's job on a film set just to make sure that things stay consistent. That is literally a job that somebody has. Another thing is how his outfit evolved throughout the film. I love it, and we'll talk more about that in later sections, because they'll have more of a spoiler warning over it. It shows the character's growth through the horrors, and I just think that it really pulls the entire story together. I better see cosplays of this, and if you don't, I will. It looked awesome. Set design. Because this is a one-room set movie, there is just one set. We do see outside for a brief moment, but it's mainly just the one room, which is just like the game it's based on. The submarine is very interesting as there isn't a lot to it, but then there's more as the story goes on. It really feels like there is a progression in the story through the sub itself. He finds things, he changes things, he fixes things, and he breaks things. And as that is all happening, it's changing throughout the film. And that is like one of my main things, is that I love how it changes in the film. And if you weren't watching for it, when the B-roll hits, that's when it'll show you the decay, the change. This film did amazing with showing you what's going on. The blood. Let's address the ocean of blood in the room, or around us, one of the two. I think the blood was used very well in this film. When you think 80,000 gallons of blood, you may be like, that's too much blood. I'm gonna be honest, I thought that too until I saw it, and I'm like, yeah, no, that is the perfect amount of blood. I wanted to jokingly say, needs more blood, but honestly, I think they used it fairly well. The progression of the use of blood is very gradual, so you're not really going to notice it. It's kind of like the frog in the soup situation. You put the frog in the cold water and slowly add heat, and the frog will not be able to jump out before it is cooked alive. It's kind of like that with the blood. You don't realize it until it's too late, that there's blood just everywhere. I kind of want to see the behind the scenes just to know how they had dirtied the set. Because did they have more than one set? Or did they just dirty up the single set? Because if they messed up the only set, then retakes would have been absolute hell. Retakes are when you have to go back to a previous scene to fix a mistake that was noticed later on, which could have also been prevented if they were looking at their dailies every day as well. Dailies are whatever you shot that day, there it is. Look through it, make sure everything's correct for tomorrow. Another thing is that films tend to be shot out of order, but this one, because of the set, costuming, and design of the story itself, it may have actually been shot in order, which is very unusual and interesting. Which, again, I really want to see some behind the scenes. Release the behind the scenes, Mark! Camera. Camera work, my specialty. I think the use of B-roll to show the progression of time is very good. It really shows the ship and how it's like he's swimming through a living creature. The extreme close-ups give the feeling of claustrophobia and desperation, and considering what this is taking place in, it's well received. They also use Dutch angles, which is when the camera is set at a 45 degrees, or just cocked in some way, shape, or form. It really tends to give the viewer a sense of discomfort and unease, which I see used wrong in a lot of other films. It was very well established and not overused. Shaky cam is actually used fairly often in this film, so if you get motion sickness from the camera shaking, just be prepared. I think one scene hit with the shaky cam a little too much, as it was really hard to see what was going on, but they may have been going for it being intentionally hard to see because of what was going on and such. And honestly, I think that scene and the film as a whole needs a rewatch for my thoughts to be totally straight on if it was too much or not. Other than that, I was fairly impressed by the cinematography. Editing. I realize I'm not the best at describing editing, but the long and short of it is that the editing was very well done. There isn't any weird cuts that mess up the flow of a scene, and the B-roll is spliced in well enough that you aren't getting confused when the passage of time goes. The camera angles help with this as they show everything you need to be focused on, and the editing emphasizes that. These two aspects of film work really well together in this. One thing that I really am curious about is how much of the after effects were put in and how much of it was practical effects. How much of it was actually there and how much of it did they have to cut in later on. There are a few scenes that definitely they had to have cut in later on, but there's a couple of other ones that are that could have been just straight up special effects. It could have been right there, which is very refreshing, honestly. This film is very refreshing to watch after being such saturated with CGI and all this other stuff. It's a very refreshing film with a very refreshing editing and cinematography styles. Plot. Alrighty, spoiler time. I've had a spoiler rating on the top. You guys see it. It's right there. It is at 10 out of 10. Full on spoiler time. So if you don't want spoilers, you can skip to the final thoughts. I will put a timestamp there. Please go and watch that. But yes, spoilers, spoilers, spoilers. Simon is such a fun character. His name is a spoiler, my goodness. You get the vibe that he's kind of lying to himself about what happened to the last tree in the station. But is he though? His descent into madness is what really makes or breaks the story, as it is a single room with a single actor, and Mark did an amazing job at portraying that. Now, I've seen quite a lot of indie films as well as student films, and I've learned to spot the new actor or the bad actor, and Mark is neither. His performance really sold the story, and none of his lines were delivered flat. As well as the other people who lent a voice to the film, everyone did an amazing acting job. And again, they all had realistic swears. Their dialogue flowed very well. It never felt forced. I love the horrors as you start to try and figure out with Simon if something is real or not. The film felt very grounded, even though it is an eldritch horror film, which is a very difficult thing to put together. The film leaves a lot of open-ended questions on what is on the black box and why it doesn't want to be found, which leaves theory people and fan fiction lovers and writers, as well as artists and the entire fandom, so much to sink their teeth into. And I love that for them. Honestly, my head has been swirling with the ideas of what could have been going on, how much there could have been going. It was very well executed, honestly. Final thoughts. I cannot recommend this film enough. It's so well done and it really just takes its time. It's in no rush to get to the horrors. There isn't a jump scare every 5 seconds just to be spooky. but it doesn't feel like it's taking forever. The pacing is very well done, and with the editing and the cinematography, it really adds to the film's atmosphere. Another thing is that this film isn't what I would call safe. The industry likes to focus on safe, so it's more welcoming to all audiences. This film wasn't. It knew its audience, and it respected its audience and worked with them. In doing so, they were able to create a film that isn't like any other today. And we all know that indie horror will always be better than mainstream horror. Also, I just want to point something out here. Fake blood is between about like $35 to $150 a gallon. They used 80,000 gallons of fake blood. So, just do some simple math and stuff. That's $2,800,000 worth of fake blood, which means that at minimum, 93.3% of the budget went towards fake blood, which means that they only had, at maximum, $200,000 to make this film, not including any of the fake blood, which makes this so much more impressive. Holy crap! Absolute cinema. Now, I don't really know how to give this a rating. I would like to go and see it again before giving it an official rating and such, but I do want to hear what your guys' thoughts were. What were some things that you enjoyed? What are things that you didn't like? What did you think of the film? Because I'm just one person who went to film school. I just like to watch movies sometimes. I like to make them more, honestly. But yeah, it's always so fun to see what somebody else has made. And because of how small the team was and how small the budget is and such, it is absolutely amazing to see that this thing made it to theaters. And I would love to have a physical copy of it, honestly. But yes, thank you all for watching. Thank you for hanging out and vibe and chill and vibe and like you do. I'll catch you guys all in the next one. But until then, thank you for watching, and please tell me your thoughts down in the comments below. And have a good one. Bye! We all live in a yellow submarine. Is that blood? A yellow submarine. Oh god, it is blood! A yellow submarine.